Hi everyone, it's Alison here. As you can see, it's pretty cold today, so I'm rocking the hat indoors look. Keep my ears warm in the cold office, and any excuse not to turn the heating on. Anyway, this is number 7 in my video series looking at my writing process. And this week, my kind of title is a little bit dramatic. What happens when things go wrong? I'm also going to talk about drafting versus editing and why perfectionism doesn't do you any favors when you're trying to get a book written. So, as you can probably tell from that, this week hasn't really gone to plan. So, I have written just over 6,000 words on The Shadow City. So I think I'm up to about 47,000 in total now, maybe 46,000 before I wrote today. And that was a lot less than I was planning to get done. So my hope last week when I spoke to you guys was that I'd get the final draft done by today. I'm still a fair way off that, and that's really been down to the time it's taken me to figure out what's happening in the second half of the book. So last week I talked about revising and replotting, and I spent quite a lot of time last week thinking about what needed to happen in the second part of my book and how to make it the book it needed to be. So I knew I needed to have a big climax at the end, which I kind of had some thoughts on, and I needed to build up to that during the second half of the second act of the book, and I needed to get a couple of twists in there. What I didn't know was what those twists were going to be. And this is something I find really tough because I like to stick to a schedule. You know, I like to know that if I've got X days and I can write X amount per day, then I will get things written. And, you know, most of the authors I know work like that. They will plot their book in advance, or even if they're pantsers, they know, you know, I'm aiming for a 60,000 word novel. If I write, you know, 2,000 words a day, then it's going to take me 30 days of writing. And it's quite easy to deal with that. Now, I don't work like that. So for any of you guys who kind of struggle and grind to a halt, well, I hope some of you do anyway, so I'm not just the only person who grinds to the halt in the middle and has to spend some time figuring it out. Now, some people do suggest writing through this, so if you get to a point when you're stuck, just keep writing, no matter what it is. I find that quite hard to do because essentially I know that what I'm writing is wasted words, and you know, I like to minimize what I need to cut. I have a gut feeling for when I've sorted something out, so I knew last week when I was trying to think about this, I knew it was a question of time. I knew the solution would come to me. I just didn't know how long it would take, and that was really, really frustrating. So I spent several mornings kind of sat down, you know, trying to just scribble down various ideas by hand. I went back to my plotting books and resources that I used to help with plotting to figure out, okay, what was wrong with the current draft, and what did I need to fix. And that was a pretty useful exercise. I tried going for walks to think about things, which often helps me, but that kind of didn't really do the trick. But eventually the ideas did come to me, and randomly, and I have had this happen to me before, but it's a bit bizarre. So we were watching Iron Man 3, I think it was. So superhero movies, for some reason, often trigger something in my brain that help me think. And we watched half of Iron Man 3 on Friday night because I was so tired that I couldn't even watch the whole film, which is pretty pathetic for a Friday night. So I kind of traipsed off to bed, exhausted at about 9:30, and I literally couldn't string a sentence together at that point, but something clicked in my brain, and the ending of the book, or how, you know, the twist towards the end of the book came to me. So I kind of sat down and half dazed, scribbled down some notes for that, and then I woke up the next morning and I managed to kind of piece together how that would link into the second part of the book. So I now have the solution, yay! It only took me 2 weeks to get there. But that has meant that I'm really behind with my writing. So, you know, I spent a bit of the weekend trying to catch up, and I'm definitely going to play catch up this week. I also booked my editor last week, so I have a definite deadline to get the draft finished, edited, and sent to her. and that's going to be pretty tight now. So my priority, certainly with my author work this week, is really focused on getting those words down, which leads me on to drafting versus editing. Now, again, a lot of people advise, or there's a lot of advice out there, that you should just write the first draft, don't go back and edit anything until you get to the end, which I think is really good advice. I think you do use different parts of your brain for writing and editing. And if if you're in the flow of writing, then you don't want to interrupt that to go back. I think that's also really helpful in terms of kind of pushing down your inner critic a bit, because certainly I find a lot of the time is I think, oh, I've written something really good here, and then I go back and read it and I'm like, that's a load of rubbish, and then I'll leave it. If I leave it again for 2 weeks and come back to it, I'm like, oh, that's not so bad after all. So I try and do that as much as possible, but I do have a big challenge with that in that I dictate a lot, and at the moment I'm mostly dictating because I'm trying to protect my wrists. And with dictation, you have to do an edit pretty much as soon as you've dictated the content, because the software is pretty good and it picks up most stuff, but there are lots of typos, different words, and sometimes it won't even come out. Even if you're correcting as you go along, it doesn't come out how you meant it to. So I find that if I don't correct that the same day, then I will go back to it and I'll have no idea what certain sentences were supposed to say. So I need to do, and I try and keep that as kind of technical as possible. So literally just correcting typos and mistakes, so it goes back to what I intended to say. But at the same time, it's really hard to avoid yourself getting pulled into doing a more thorough kind of sentence level edit of that chapter or scene, which it isn't the right time to do. And that's kind of time spent that I could be spending drafting. So that's what I'm really struggling with this week. I think that is part, by nature, I'm a bit of a perfectionist. So it's really hard to push down that perfectionist instinct to kind of go over it again and again and again until it's at the level I want it to be. Whereas what I really need to focus on is getting down the draft. I think the other thing that can be a symptom of is a bit of procrastination. So if I'm not really sure what's happening in the next scene, then I'll be like, oh, well, I'll just do some editing of this so it feels like I'm doing something which contributes towards the goal, whereas actually I need to be focusing on getting the words down. So certainly this week I'm gonna try a bit of a new technique. So I'm gonna try really focusing on writing down what's happening in the scene before I start dictating it, to see if that helps me just keep going with the flow of writing. I'll be doing some minimal edits on the dictation just so it's kind of legible. I might leave some of the punctuation edits till later. So for example, I do dictate punctuation, but I don't dictate speech marks because I find that slows me down a lot and it's a lot quicker to add in afterwards. So I may leave that until a kind of later edit just so I can focus on getting the draft finished. So I'm hoping next week I have better news for you and we can start talking about editing rather than drafting, because otherwise I'm not really sure how long I can drag this out for. And so I'm going to be making a huge effort on that. Whether I can get it done will partly depend how much other work I have on this week. So we will see, but certainly even if I don't have it completely finished by Monday, it needs to be finished next week. So wish me luck, fingers crossed, and I'll see you all again next week. I hope you all have a great productive reading or writing week. Bye.